And so I got to ask, do you ever even think about eternity? Or does the thought of eternity ever even cross your mind? And I got to say, if it only crosses your mind when you think about how long my sermons seem, you're in trouble. I was recently telling a friend of mine that I was going to be preaching on the topic of eternity. And he said, you have to look up the story of Mr. Eternity. And so I did, and I discovered there's a man by the name of Arthur Stace who was born in Australia into a terrible family situation that included extreme poverty. And as a result, in his early years, he spent as a hopeless alcoholic before his life ended up being transformed when he was given the hope of eternity. And Arthur became a Christ follower after hearing an inspirational message on eternity that captured his attention. And really, he became captivated by this concept of eternity. And then he heard a message that was entitled The Echoes of Eternity. And it was given by a well-known evangelist who said in that message these words, "Eternity, eternity. I wish that I could sound or shout that word to everyone in the streets of Sydney. You've got to meet it. Where will you spend eternity?" And after an interview one time, Stace said, "Eternity went ringing through my brain, and I suddenly began crying and felt this powerful call from the Lord to write the word eternity." And even though he was really illiterate, could hardly write his own name legibly, when he would write the word eternity, it came out smoothly in a beautiful copperplate script. And so several mornings a week, for the next 35 years of his life, Stace would get up at 4 a.m. so he could secretly go around the streets of Sydney, and in chalk, he would write the word eternity on sidewalks and on doorsteps and on railway station entrances and anywhere else he could think to write the word eternity. And from 1932 to his death in 1967, it's estimated that he wrote the word eternity over 500,000 times, which is why he eventually became known as Mr. Eternity. Folks, eternity is a big deal. And one of the things I've kind of rediscovered in preparation for this message is that honestly, the major theme of the New Testament is the promise of eternity and the need to keep that thought at the forefront of our thinking. And here would be just one of many examples. It's in Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. And the Apostle Paul writes to some believers in the city of Colossae. He says, "Since then, you've been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Not only hearts, but set your mind on things above, not on those earthly things." Why? Because you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory for eternity. And see, when you begin to set your mind on things above, it's going to allow you to cultivate the kind of death-defying thoughts that can literally change your life. Now, it's interesting because even people who have no real belief in God still believe, usually in some kind of life after death. And folks, that's because eternity is actually hardwired into the human psyche. It's hardwired there. When God created mankind, he placed eternity in our hearts. We're actually hardwired to understand that there is more to this life than just this life. Solomon in the Old Testament, he understood that, and he wrote about it in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. He says, "God has made everything beautiful in its time. He's also set eternity into the human heart." Now, we're not ever going to figure that out, and so he reminds us, says, "Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end," because it's almost beyond comprehension. So why would God do that? Because God understands the power that the correct thinking about eternity offers to us.